So hi, my name's Jo Bingham. I'm an artist living and working in Cairns in Australia. So welcome to my channel. Thank you for subscribing to everybody that's subscribed to my videos. So today's video is in response to a request that I had from somebody that just wanted to know a little bit more about painting manes, horses' manes in watercolour. So that's what today's video is about. So I hope you enjoy it and thank you very much. Before we start painting, I just thought I'd show you this little watercolour that I did quite a while ago. And it's from a photograph by Karen Bremelsick. And I will put a link to her website in the show notes. So it's mostly watercolour with just touches of body colour on the top of the mane, just to sort of highlight that, and a few bits and pieces here and there. Now, regardless of what colour you're painting, there are some general rules when it comes to painting manes and forelocks, which primarily is to make sure that you do anything that's behind or underneath first. So you paint any skin, any tack, any ears. So I would paint this ear before I did the forelock. I'd paint this before I would do mane, ears, forelock, regardless of colour. Obviously, if you're painting a very, a white or a grey horse, different rules for painting the skins, and I will probably do another video on that. The other things to think about are things like, doing it all in one go. Do your mane all in one go. Don't do it in sections because you might change the colour as you go across, and a lot of wet into wet work, which I'll demonstrate. I think that's it for now. Okay, I'll go on to the next bit. So before you start, make sure that you've got all of your equipment ready. So I've got a range of paints. So as I said, I do look at whatever it is that I'm painting and just try and identify any colour that I think I might need. So I've got a range here. I have got some gouache, ultramarine blue, great for getting the dark colours, burnt sienna, which is great for getting that beautiful chestnut colour, sepia, which is a very dark brown. I've got orange, and I've got a sort of a Windsor red, which is a slightly bluer red, and Van Dyke brown. Plus I've got two brushes. I've got one for detail and one for getting that water down quickly. So that's a 10 and a 4, I think. Also got my piece of kitchen roll. I've got my trusty palette, which has got my colours already out. And of course my water jar. So now we're ready to go. So I'll talk through putting the first layers on and then I will speed up because otherwise it's worse than watching paint dry, watching somebody paint. Okay, so I've got all the colours out on my palette. And now the first thing I do is I make pools of paint. So I take a little bit, out from all of these colours that I've put out. And I make a big pool of paint in the middle. So I don't make the pool of paint all the same. So it depends where it is. I've got the reds and the siennas up here. So you end up with something like that with a big pool of paint. The next thing you do is you're going to put lots of water on this mane. So we're going to work wet into wet. And you even now, even though you're only putting water on, you're still going in the right direction. You're going in the direction of the hair. Okay. So we've got my water on. So now I start using some colour. I have put ultramarine out. Need ultramarine in that mix. Okay. So the first thing we do is we look for one of the predominant colours. And can you see how it's quite purpley around this area? So we're going to start dropping in. I think it needs to be more purple. And what I'm going to try and do, I'm going to try and keep this top layer quite clean I don't know whether I'll do it, but I'm going to try. So now I'm bringing in some burnt sienna because we want to bring in some chestnuts. You mustn't be frightened by whatever it is that's happening with your paint, because at this point, we are literally getting some colour onto the paper. If you find that you're getting too much water on it, just dampen your brush. So with your kitchen roll, you literally just do that on your kitchen roll, and then take some water out if you find there's too much. And again, if you find it's coming up too much up here, the colour, again, just wipe your brush down, dampen your brush onto that kitchen roll, and get some of that water out. Okay. So you're still using those colours that I showed you before, the reds and the browns. For my horses, mostly I tend to use Van Dyke Brown, Burnt Umber, and Burnt Sienna. That's probably the colours I use more than anything, although sepia is good for getting those really dark colours. So more of these purples coming in here. And we're starting to use less of the pool of paint now. We're going more directly. So now when I'm putting paints on, I'm actually putting my brush into some of the paints because I want more colour. Once you start feeling confident, but can you see how where it ends at the top, you just get this beautiful softness. Whereas if you did wet on dry, you wouldn't get that. Let's get some more of that purpley colour. And then as you get to the bottom, obviously, can you see how I'm sort of using my brush? I'm holding my brush quite away down the handle because I don't want to go like this yet. I'm not doing details. I'm getting the colour down. Quite orangey towards the bottom of the mane, so I'm bringing in some oranges down here. Right. Just taking some of that water out up there. There we go. Right. So now we've got the basic colours on. Now we can start really looking at, I missed that bit there. Right, we can get some darker colours on and we can get some lighter colours on. So this is all your base, basically it's a base wash. And you can really go to town and use whatever colours you like. As you can see, I haven't used the same colours, but it's just fun, just choosing whatever colours you want. Just so long as it's lighter. See, it's lighter at the bottom. Okay, now let's have a concentrate at the top here. Right. Now I'm going to wash my brush out and again, I'm just going to lay my brush like that. And I'm going to, again, it's the next stage of just softening that top so you don't get those funny little blunt endings because it's very soft. We're going to work on this a bit later when I'm doing the speed painting. You'll see how, again, I take it to the next stage. bring some oranges in down there, I think. Remember that watercolor dries lighter. So even if you think, oh my goodness, I really put a lot of color on, don't worry about it. It will dry lighter. And if you do find that it's dried a bit dark, just take it out. If anybody would like a little bit more information on some of these colors, the Van Dyke browns and sepia and burnt sienna, just ask. I can always do a video on the different colors and how to use them. Right, now I'm going to take a couple of areas out and then I'm going to put a couple of darks in and then I'll leave that to dry. So when I say leave out, I wash my brush, I dampen it on the paper just like I showed you. I dampen it, I dry it out on the paper, and then I'm just going to take a couple of highlights out. And we'll work on those later once it's dry. Don't want too many. Trying to keep that clean at the top. Okay, now we're going to put a few darker bits on. So I'm using my sepia now. So since I'm not using it, sepia is, see how dark that is? That's sepia. Well, that's sepia in the brand I'm using, which is HWC. That's the thing, all different brands are slightly different of paint. Especially Van Dyke Brown. Van Dyke Brown is incredibly different depending on what brand you buy. Now, I don't want to make this too heavy, so. But again, as I said, they will soften. Just make those strokes long and confident. And as I said, make sure that you are, you've got your brush above you. I advocate a lot of the times when I'm doing details to anchor your hand. Excuse me. But when you're doing this, you need to have freedom. Excuse me. To make those long, sweeping marks. Okay, I think that's a good start. I'm just trying to get in a little bit more dark there because it's quite dark in that middle section without using repetitive color and just making it all black or, dark brown. So I'm bringing in some blues here. Blue's a great color for darkening up without killing it. Can you see how it's already starting to look a little bit like hair? Might bring just a couple of the reds and oranges just at the top here. I'm sure like many artists, you think, I'll finish this now. And you think, no, I'll just work on that a little bit. Oh, I might just work on this one a little bit before I go and sit down. And then before you know it, half an hour's gone past. Okay, look, we'll leave it there. I'll be back in a minute. So this section is where I speeded up the film just to make it a little bit more interesting. But I'm concentrating on putting more paint on, more of the darker colors to start building up the tones. I also start doing the feathery bits at the top. I'm really happy with the way that the colour ends at the top of the mane. I've got a lovely blurred effect up there. But you need to start feathering as well, so it doesn't just stop. So I'm using that very small brush just to start putting a few feathery lines in. It just, again, it adds to that realism. It adds to that effect. And as you can see, I'm lightening up the tones at the front. And I'm sort of putting a few, you see where the darks are, I'm just putting a few, I'm painting in between the hairs, if you like. So you can still see the colours underneath of the hairs. The dark is in between those hairs. And sometimes you can't see it right to the end. So I've just got my my white gouache out. So it's a tricky paint, gouache. You can't just use it straight out of the tube. It's too chalky. You have to mix it with water to a sort of like a milk consistency. And then you can start using it to paint details. I don't use an awful lot of gouache. I just use it for these details and they pop out and it looks amazing. So I would recommend that you do have a tube of white gouache in with your paint set. So I think we're just about at the end here. Can you see how the gouache just finishes it off? And you know, it really has a lovely effect against all those dark paints. So I think that's just about it.